talking about the joint warfighting concept. Let's go right into the Army, obviously the chief. One of the key messages, sir, yesterday, and it was that General Murray laid out the importance of the top line funding, whatever it is that you get, that you're going to stay the course on modernization, right? And that you are absolutely going to do the right thing by your soldiers in terms of protecting the 485,000. And there's 1,000 people on the line here today. The feedback we got last night from that message and the strength of your leadership was very important. Please welcome General McConville.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Sam, and good afternoon to everybody. And it's a great day in the United States Army, and not just because of the weather, but because we serve with the world's greatest soldiers. And it's been an incredibly challenging year for the Army. You know, really more than a year. You know, you think back, it's starting New Year's Eve in 2019 with the 82nd Airborne Division being rapidly deployed into Iraq to protect our American citizens. And then a few months later, COVID hit. And in the Army, we can't telecommute to training, and we can't telecommute to combat. And so we had to adapt. Then a few months later, we had social unrest erupting across the country. So we had to adapt, and along the way, we learned a lot. Then we had natural disasters kept coming, hurricanes, wildfires, storms, and our great soldiers reacted. Meanwhile, we had global operations going around the world, in Korea, in Europe, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and really throughout the world. Then we supported operations in the National Capital Region to ensure a safe and secure transition of power on January 20th. And during the past year and a half, we've witnessed one challenge after another. And every time that the nation has called upon America's Army, it has been ready and it has been there. And although it's been a challenging year, I could not be more proud of our soldiers, the greatest soldiers in the world. I could not be more proud of the Army's people. Our people are the soldiers from all three components. There are Army civilians, there are families, and there are soldiers for life, our retirees and veterans. And despite all these challenges, the Army has not lost momentum in pursuing our three priorities. We are taking care of people. We remain ready to fight and win the nation's war as a member of the Joint Force. And we continue, and I highlight this, our greatest transformation in over 40 years through Army modernization. And we are committed to all those three priorities. And people are the Army's #1 priority. They are our greatest strength, and they are our most important weapon system. Part of putting people first is talent management. And the Army is competing against industry and everyone else out there for the best talent that America has to offer. We are no longer going to be an industrial age Army of interchangeable parts, where we define people's talents using only two variables. You're a captain of infantry or you're a sergeant of engineers. What we know in the future, we must look at each person's unique knowledge, skills, behaviors, and even as blasphemous as it sounds in the Army, their preferences, to put the right person in the right job at the right time. In order to do that, we are modernizing our personnel systems, our industrial age personnel systems. It's kind of like global positional satellites. We take that for granted now that we can quickly navigate around the world, but in order to do that, we had to build a constellation of satellites and make that work. And that's what we're doing right now with our personnel systems. An integrated personnel and pay system is bringing together all three components for the first time in the history of the Army. And that will allow us to use artificial intelligence to help us see and find talent across the total force. That way, when a crisis like COVID hits, and we need every medical professional and scientist, whether active, guard, or in the inactive reserve, we'll be able to identify them immediately and contact them and see if they want to continue to serve. We're changing the way we assess potential soldiers for leadership positions so we can put the best people in place and weed out those who don't personify leadership excellence. Our new command assessment programs are similar to the NFL's annual scouting combine. And I need to add, I was talking about combines, and I was told by one of my younger officers they didn't know what a combine was. But for those who don't, it's a assessment that the National Football League uses to bring in players coming out of college and determine if they have the right knowledge, skills, and behavior to be professional athletes. So we've taken that and we use it to pick our future leaders. And what we've found is great leaders get a chance to shine, even if they didn't come in with the best record. I kind of argue this is very similar to a Division I, a Division II, or Division III college student that played football coming into the Professional Football League. If they have the right knowledge, the right skills, and attributes, they can make the Professional Football League. So that's what we're doing when it comes to the command assessment program, and we are finding that this is actually picking the best talent that we need to lead our Army. And the foundation of putting people first is the idea of building cohesive teams that are highly trained, that are disciplined and fit, where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, and that are ready to fight and win. And those are really important words, that they are treated with dignity and respect, and we build these cohesive teams. Because when you build cohesive teams in every organization, at every level, you avoid those harmful behaviors that hurt soldiers and break trust with the American people. These are sexual harassment and sexual assault, acts of racism, acts of extremism, and also very concerned about suicides in the force. With cohesive teams, we achieve readiness to compete and win and transform the Army in the information age. And after 20 years of irregular warfare, counterinsurgency, and counter-terrorist operations, the post-9/11 era is over. We live in a world of great power competition. But great power competition doesn't have to mean great power conflict. And quite frankly, it can't mean that. And we avoid great power conflict with peace through strength. A strong whole-of-government approach supported by a strong military with strong allies and partners. The Army is ready to fight tonight, but our readiness gains over the last couple of years are fragile. The Army has 485,000 soldiers on active duty and a little over 1 million in the total force. That's roughly the same size Army that we had in 9/11. And we're not going to grow this Army. So we have to be smart about maintaining our readiness gains. One of the ways we're doing this is through foundational readiness. The best combat forces in the world have soldiers and units that are masters of their craft. Foundational readiness means prioritizing training at the company level and below, because that's where our new soldiers are. That's where our soldiers who haven't been in combat tend to reside. That's where soldiers come into in our force, and we have to invest in our new soldiers to make sure they have the skill sets and the values that we need for them to excel in the Army. And by giving smaller units and soldiers the time and resources to become masters of their craft, we end up with brigades and battalions that are more agile, more lethal, and more combat effective. This year, we're adopting a new unit lifestyle model, the regionally aligned readiness and modernization model. We call it REARM. And, that sounds like, what is that all about? What it's really all about is making sure that we have the supply of forces available to the COCOM commanders, and they know what they are. They are regionally aligned. They are ready, and it also allows us to identify those units that we're going to modernize and give them the time to do that. So REARM takes care of people, providing predictability and reducing op tempo. It provides combatant commanders with supply-based readiness through habitually assigned units, and it provides units with dedicated windows for modernization. But modernization is much more than new equipment. The Army faces an inflection point. The battlefield is becoming faster, it's becoming more lethal, and it's becoming more distributed. Overmatch will belong to the side that can make better decisions faster. And that requires innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. The Army is undergoing its most comprehensive transformation in over 40 years. We are transforming to provide the joint force with speed, range, and convergence of cutting-edge technologies required to win the next fight. 3 years ago, we adopted multi-domain operations as our new warfighting concept in support of the Joint All-Domain Operations concept. Multi-domain operations recognizes that we'll be contested in all domains, on the land, in the sea, in the air, in space, and in cyber. And that conflicts will end with a return to the infinite game of military competition. Now we have turned that concept into actionable doctrine. We are standing up new organizations like the Multi-Domain Task Force and Security Force Assistance Brigades. As of last May, all 6 Security Force Assistance Brigades have been activated, 5 in the active force and 1 in the National Guard, and they are in the process of being employed around the world in support of our allies and partners, building capacity and capability. We are supplementing our DIRT combat training centers with a synthetic training environment using virtual and augmented reality to take advantage of technology to train our soldiers. And we are pursuing our 6 modernization priorities, and they have not changed, and we are committed to making them happen, including the 31+4 signature systems. Long-range precision fires, number 1. Next-generation combat vehicle, number 2. Future vertical lift, number 3. The Army network, number 4. Air and missile defense, 5. And soldier lethality, 6. We have not left them. We are committed to making them happen, and we must transform the Army to be ready for future conflicts over the next 40 years. And with a modern and multi-domain total force, the Army will provide multiple options to combatant commanders and multiple dilemmas to our competitors and potential adversaries. Our multi-domain task forces in the Indo-Pacific and European theaters will deliver long-range precision effects during competition and have long-range precision fires to deter or to be used during conflict. Together, our modernization priorities will enable a joint force to penetrate anti-access aerial denial environments, suppress air defenses from strategic ranges, and create our own anti-access air deniable bubbles if required. The Army will have the capability to open windows of opportunity for the joint force to exploit. And these are not aspirational goals. Yesterday, the Precision Strike missile flew more than 400 kilometers, its longest range flown to date at White Sands missile ranges with very good effects. And we'll deliver that capability in FY23. Also in FY23, we'll also witness the fielding of our first long-range hypersonic weapons firing battery and the delivery of our extended-range cannon artillery. You hear in the Army talk a lot about convergence. Convergence is the act of coming together, whether it's people, organizations, technologies, or concepts. And for those who didn't get to listen to Mike Murray yesterday, Project Convergence is the Army's campaign of learning and a structured series of demonstrations and experiments to get us the capabilities that we need for the future. We are converging the right people through soldier-centered design by linking scientists and operators in our cross-functional teams and partnering them with our acquisition professionals. We are converging weapon systems by making sure they are integrated and they are adaptable. And we are converging information through artificial intelligence, machine learning, low Earth orbit satellites in the cloud to link joint sensors to joint shooters through the right command and control node. Project Conversion is how the Army contributes to the combined joint all-domain command and control network. And I say combined because our systems must not only be compatible with those of our sister services, they must also be interoperable with those of our allies and partners that are so crucial to our future endeavors. The United States is the strongest land force The United States Army is the strongest land force in the world. And a great source of that strength comes from our alliances and our partnerships. And we cannot take them for granted. Part of great power competition is competing for those relations. And as a people organization, the Army is well qualified to maintain and expand that vital network. The Interim National Security Strategic Guidance tells us to invest in people and their families, to sustain readiness, and to shift from unneeded legacy platforms to free up resources to invest in cutting-edge technologies and capabilities, to streamline our acquisition process, and maintain a skilled workforce protected from harmful behaviors. The Army has been and will remain well in line with this strategy to be ready today and transform for tomorrow. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Well done, sir.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The mosh pit awaits, sir.
All right. Thank you.
I asked for some more colorful music for you today, sir.
Excellent.
Yes, sir. I think they went with like "You Are One Family" or something like
All
that.
right.
Sam, go ahead and fire away. I know we've got, I want to make sure we make the best use of your time.
We're good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's start with John Roberti. John, are you on mute?
Not anymore. I hope you can hear me.
Outstanding. Please.
Great. Chief, good afternoon. It's great seeing you. It's John Roberti with Cubic. You probably think I'd bring up synthetic training environment, but I wanted to shift to your comments on the shift to great power competition. Given the significant research and development the Army has applied to addressing survivable battlefield communications over the past few years, would you share your view on fielding contested environment communications and C4ISR capabilities on the Army's key aviation programs, such as Future Vertical Lift or the Future Tactical Unmanned Aircraft Systems? Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for the question, and I think you hit something that's absolutely critical to the future. Is we're going to have communications that allow us to achieve convergence. We have to have communications that facilitate us being part of the combined joint all-domain command and control network. And what's different now is we haven't been really contested in that domain. And what we find is when we get convergence, and we've done some testing with Project Convergence, we start getting the effects we need in tens of seconds, vice tens of minutes. And so if we can tie together sensors and shooters, the lethality that gives us, the decision dominance that gives us, really gives us overmatch. So we have to expect that our competitors or our adversaries will target that. So we have to build resilient capabilities. We never want to be a one-option commander or one-option army, so there has to be multiple paths to do that. We start thinking about kill chains. Is it a kill web? So if someone attacks a certain capability within that, or they jam, or they take out a certain capability, we have to build resilience into that capability, and we have to assume that people are going to attack our strength, and that strength is going to be the network.
Thank you, sir, and go Sox.
Absolutely, and they are.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Sidney Freeberg, Breaking Defense.
Yes, sir. He sneaked into the queue, sir. I apologize. I did my best to keep him out.
Sydney's always here.
Yes, sir.
Good to see Sydney.
Like a parasite. He's just there. I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you. I've always thought of myself as the tapeworm of journalism. Let me ask, this is something that General Funk addressed recently. We focus a lot on the technology of our adversaries, but they're also modernizing their personnel. They're also building, more of an NCO corps in China and Russia. They're also moving, from conscript professional armies. As you obviously, the Army's people are at strength. As you look at our adversaries, how do you see them professionalizing, modernizing their personnel?
Yeah, you ask a good question, because to me, at the end of the day, I talk about people first and our most important weapon system. But a lot of other armies are really challenged to create the non-commissioned officer corps that we had. And you said some are moving from conscription, but they're still conscripting people, and they're still only leaving people in their army for a year or two. And the way you get the most highly qualified non-commissioned officers that we have is through delivered practice, multiple repetitions of training, multiple repetitions of deployments, and do it over a long period of time with professional education, and then compete for that talent and bring them up. I don't see any other Army, at least in the competition sphere, that does that. But we should not take that for granted. We have to compete for the talent, and that's one of the reasons in the United States Army we're moving from an industrial age personnel management system to a 21st century talent management system. We look at the young people today, the young men and women who are courageous and still want to serve. They want us to recognize them for their individual talents. And those talents are going to not just be in typical military occupation specialties like infantry or armor or artillery. They're going to be in cyber. They're going to be in software writing. And what we're finding is when we start to take a hard look at who these people are, they have some incredible skill sets. I just met a young specialist at our software factory. He's a medic by trade, but he's one of the best software writers that we have in the Army right now. He's been doing it for a long time, does not have a degree. And so how do we, first of all, identify those people with those special skill sets, then how do we compete for their talents so they stay in the Army and we get to keep them for a bunch of years? That's what the whole people first and the talent management system is about.
Very good.
Well
Thank
spoken.
you.
Yes, sir.
At risk of staying within the press and media, let's move forward to Matthew Beinart, Defense Daily.
Great, thank you. So yesterday, General Murray described the divestiture decisions that the Army is going to have to make as almost impossible choices. So I was wondering if, what are your thoughts? Do you agree that those choices will be near impossible, very difficult as you kind of move forward? And, as those choices get harder, how does that maybe impact your confidence level about being able to go after the full suite of 31+4 signature systems facing potentially tighter budgets? Thanks.
Well, first of all, I get, General Murray is an incredible officer, and when he talks about tough decisions, he's absolutely right. But they're not impossible decisions. What we have to do at our level, and certainly the Secretary and myself, is take a look at the strategy that we're undertaking, and then come back to both the leadership and explain what we bring to the joint force to help accomplish that strategy. And certainly, as we've talked about, this trade-offs, so, one of the first places you go to end strength, and the Secretary and I are on record saying we're going to freeze end strength on the active side at 485,000. We're not going to grow, even though we could make the argument that with the op tempo that we see on our troops, we should be bigger. But this is where priorities come in. And then, when it comes to readiness, which is really the second bucket of funding, we have a sacred obligation to send troops to combat that are ready. And we're not going to sacrifice the readiness of our troops. And again, that's nuance in how we do that. We want to be efficiently effective the way we get after that. And then when it comes to modernization, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. We're going to, we know where our priorities are. The 6 modernization priorities have not changed. The 31+4 systems have not changed. We do have some legacy systems that we're incrementally improving along the way. They have tremendous support, and we're going to have a discussion on do we slow that failings down, or how do we get after that, because we know where our priorities are.
Right.
And that's just a matter of, at least where I said as Chief of Staff of the Army, this is what our priorities are. These are requirements. If we have unfilled requirements, we just need to lay those out for the Department of Defense leadership, and then in a UFOR-type statement to Congress.
Very good.
Well spoken.
Thank you, Matthew. Moving on, Mark Hutton. Are you on mute?
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Sir, we can hear you.
So, sir, my question is kind of in a similar vein as what you just heard, and a little bit more pointed. Everybody knows there's only so many dollars to go around. So, from your perspective, sir, what are the legacy programs that we really have to ramp down and move away from to ensure that you can continue your focus on CFT modernization priorities?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specific programs because we really haven't released the budget yet. But you know, what I take a look at when you at the general idea is we recognize the importance of speed, we recognize the importance of range, and we recognize the importance of convergence. And you know, and those systems are the ones that we're going to go after into the future. And you know, some people have even asked me, why do we need armored vehicles? You know, we're moving away from that. We don't see where they use the Pacific or those type of things. I will tell you, at least my experience as a commander in Iraq and having looked at a lot of battlefields is, you know, I would not go into any type of urban environment without some type of armor capability. We can have a discussion on weights, but I would not do that. And if others are willing to do that, then good luck to them. But you know, most of the brigade commanders, you know, Mike Murray and I were brigade commanders together. General Mark Miller and I were brigade commanders. Abe Abrams, we're all brigade commanders in the 1st Cavalry Division. So many of us have learned the lessons of the importance of armor-type capabilities when you get into urban environments. And quite frankly, I learned that later in my career, Vice, you know, growing up in light units and special operations units where we might have learned that sooner. Had we had an opportunity. So what we have to do, though, is when you look at the legacy systems, if you want to call them that, you know, there's still some of still the best in the world we have that we've been incrementally improving. There's going to be a time when we stop incrementally improving them and we bring the new systems on. Right. And that's going to be driven by how well, you know, the 31+4 are doing. We're very pleased with how quickly industry is moving. You know, I just mentioned in my opening talks how quickly, you know, we're fielding hypersonics in 23, we're fielding PRISM in 23, we're fielding IRCA in 23, we're fielding next generation combat weapons. There's a whole slew of weapons systems that we're deploying over in 22, 23, 24, and 25. And I think that's going to fundamentally transform how we operate, and we want to do that.
Sir, as a quick follow-on, can you really field FLRAA and FARA together?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
That's pretty decisive. Outstanding. Moving on, Dave Ducchino, please, from Serco.
Yes, thanks, General. Appreciate you coming. And I wanted to reference your comment as soldiers as masters of their craft. You know, will the Army be taking forward any innovative training techniques that, you know, might have come about as a result of the pandemic environment? I know in industry, we're really relooking at that, and it doesn't all apply in the Army, but some parts would, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, one of the things with the technology is, you know, we've learned a lot from, hey, we're telecommuting here, if you take a look at it. You know, normally we do an event like this, it'd be in some conference room, there might be 50 or 100 people. I think they said there was 1,000 maybe here or something like that.
Sir.
So you have a whole bunch of people that can participate in a way that we've never had before. We're doing the same type thing in the Army. We're taking advantage of this. But at other times, you know, I like to say we can't telecommute to combat, and some of the training we can't telecommute to. So we have to bring people together. But you know, we're excited about one of the transformational systems that we're in the process of developing is the integrated visual augmentation system. And really what that allows us to do in the future is to rehearse and train in virtual reality, which is very, very impressive if you had a chance. In fact, Secretary McCarthy and I went through a shooting house with a system, and the ability to get deliberate practice, the ability to get repetitions, the ability to get feedback, and you know, take a look at where your weapon was pointing, you know, whether you were proper as far as when you could put a whole bunch of scenarios in that. So there's a lot of value in these systems that are coming out. And quite frankly, our young men and women are very used to using these type systems. I've got a kid that flies Apaches. I learned to fly Apaches at an older age, and used to flying, you know, by the seat of your pants, so to speak. And then when you have to go to a system type environment and use, you know, it's basically a computer with a rotor system on it, you know, they are very comfortable with that. They do it. It's just like for them flying a video game. And so we have to take advantage of those systems and how we make our soldiers masters of the craft. But there's a, you know, there's a great book I call The Talent Code. I ask people to read, But how do you get people really good at what they do? It's deliberate practice. Gladwell's talked about 10,000 hours, but people that really practice well. We call it training. We call it rehearsals. You have to do that. To have expert coaching, to get leaders that really know their job and train these young men and women how to do it right. That's why we're going back to what we're calling foundational readiness, where we give the sergeants more time to spend with their brand new soldiers, not only on training, but on values, on appropriate behaviors. And so you build a very, very strong foundation for your organizations, and then you can get into more sophisticated type operations. But if you don't get the foundation strong, just like building a house, you won't have a good house.
Outstanding. Just to confirm, the name of that book was Talent Code?
The Talent Code, yeah.
The Talent Code.
The Talent Code. And I gave you the crib notes, so to speak. It's three things. You want to have masters of craft. You make sure that they do deliberate practice, primal cues, that they're passionate about what they're doing, and you get expert coaching. And if you take our look at our very, very best units in the Army, and you take a look at how they take people and train them to make them the best in the world, that's how they do it. And professional sports teams do exactly the same thing.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, Stephen Hedger with Rheinmetall.
Thanks, Chief. Maybe two quick comments in response to something you said and a note. I snuck away this morning and from Jim's live feed here to watch Christine Wormuth, your Secretary of the Army nominee this morning, and it was a refreshingly positive session over at SASC and a lot of enthusiasm and support for the Army and really great to see. And I think it'll be exciting when she's confirmed and on the team with you, Chief. And then a quick response, this is parochial a tiny bit, but you just mentioned, I wouldn't go in an urban environment without an armored force. And as I think about OMFV, where American Rheinmetall is engaged, but another place we're engaged is in Australia. And one of their prominent procurement programs right now is a new IFE. And that's telling about what's important in Asia as well, not just in Europe. So just apologies for the parochial comment, but your point well taken on the need for armor. There's a lot of focus on the size of your budget, rightly so. But I wanted to ask you about executing what you all have said you're committed to with the 31+4 in the top 6, and how you feel about how responsive industry has been. You've just mentioned that, but particularly where you're getting new entrants in, non-traditionals, folks who are either newer to the market or bringing something new and different to you, and whether you feel the Army's doing a good job reaching out, and whether we're doing a good job of reaching out and connecting with you. And related to that, part two would be, as you take these programs from R&D and prototyping and into production across the valley of death, as everyone has said, how confident are you that industry is ready to deliver with also modern industrial capability and delivery, so we get on time, on budget delivery for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because one of the things that we're doing, and we don't have it completely right, maybe so. We saw even with the absolute manned fighting vehicle, the next generation combat vehicle. The future was we rolled that out. We kind of had to come back and. But what we're trying to do is take a new approach to how we work with industry to take advantage of the innovation that's out in the industry. So historically, that I'll make it probably oversimplify it, but we used to spend 5 to 7 years at our centers of excellence. So if you were looking for a new armored vehicle, we go to the Armor Center. They'd spend 5 to 7 years going through a process to build a specified requirement of what this thing should look like. And we'd go out to industry, we'd have a huge, kind of prescriptive requirements. And then we give it to industry, and someone might get, win the contract or something like that. And then we'd try to develop this system over the next 7, 10 years. And we'd find out things, and again, I'm going to, kind of probably exaggerate, but, industry is trying to get the thing, make the thing airdroppable from 40,000 feet or something like that, when we really didn't even need that. And as a chief, if I knew that was going to cost me $2 billion more and 6 months more or a year of development, I would have said, what are we doing? But it's in the requirement. Industry, you're doing the right thing. You want to do that. So the approach we're trying to take now is we go out to industry and we say, hey, we think we need a new vehicle, and it should be kind of like this. And then we ask you to take a look at that and come back with initial maybe concept design. And we're getting people from non-traditional. They'll come back in and say, wow, you've got a pretty innovative approach. We're trying to, some people are uncomfortable with that because they like the prescriptive type thing, but we're saying, hey, we want to kind of do this, we kind of want to carry this, we want to go this far, this fast. Tell us what you can do. And then you can come back, and in some of these things, we're getting 100 organizations coming in, and we're taking a look at them and going, wow, this is interesting. We didn't know industry could do this, we could do this, and then maybe we downsize to maybe 10 partners and say, okay, you get a certain amount of money, you've gone through phase 2, now you go to phase 3, you can come back with an actual design of this thing. And we take a look at design, modify our characteristics based on what we've learned from the process, go through that, give you some more money, maybe down select to a couple of folks that build us a prototype. Show us that you can actually deliver what you just did on paper. PowerPoint to me is very powerful. It's amazing in the briefings I take what people can do in PowerPoint. And then when it comes time to deliver, it's a lot harder. So then you come back with a prototype, and we put soldiers on your prototype, and we're running around, and they give you feedback, and then we kind of go, okay, this is what we want to do. We nail the requirements down, and now we actually put out a requirements document that says, rather than drop it from 40,000, we know you can't do that, but we know you can get it from 20,000. We can, or can do this, this, and this. And now we have a design that's in the obtainium, and we got a pretty good idea what it's going to cost, and we don't go down, kind of some of the process that we did before. We spend billions of dollars on a cost-plus contract, and then we end up at the end and we have something we can't use. And the other thing we appreciate, you may not like it from industry, but we like you investing your money. It just seems like you do it much better than we do, and we're all excited about that, helping us come along and get us to the product we need.
Well, thanks, Chief. We are proud to be investing in the Army's initiatives. We also like getting paid, so I'll say it goes both ways, right? But
it does.
Thanks very much, and we're excited to be partnering and trying to do good things for the Army and for your soldiers.
No, we appreciate it, and again, at least when I'm around, we've paid a lot of companies, for their contracts, but we want to make sure we get the product we asked for. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next up, Sheila Kayaoglu.
Oh, it's Kailu, sir.
Pardon?
It's Kailu.
There you go. It's close enough.
I knew I would butcher it. I apologize.
No, she's big on the investment community.
It's close enough. Thank you. Thanks, General. I want to follow up on future vertical lift. Maybe if you could talk about, you stated the need for ground vehicles in the next potential conflict. How do you think about Army aviation? You said FARA and FLRAA are both feasible. Why do you think that? And do you think the tilt rotor versus a traditional helicopter offering has any impact on the competition?
Well, I think when I talk about vertical lift, I got to be taught because it's in the the competition phase and very So what I want to say is when we look at future vertical lift, there's really two mission sets that we're taking a look at. One is a future attack reconnaissance, so it's got a lethal type capability, and a future long range assault capability. We believe we need those both as we take a look at the future environment that we're going to operate in, whether that's environment or a battlefield. We've tested those capabilities in simulation against some of the things that we think we need, and they come out with the capabilities that we need. Now, what it looks like is it's not going to be a helicopter because the characteristics that we need, I could put my aerospace engineering degree, I get to use it a little bit, but about 100, you can't have a helicopter pretty much that's going to go faster than 150 knots. So you have to do something. You got an advancing blade concept. You got to push a prop. You might tilt the rotor, tilt the wings. You got to do something different to get that capability. But when we look at places we can operate around the world, it gives you incredible capabilities when you have the speed and range. If you think about, I go back to Afghanistan or Iraq, a lot of our unit operations were limited almost to the 1 hour, the golden rule, how far a Black Hawk could fly, in an hour and get back there, or 30 minutes. And, and then when you think about it, if we were going to we have troops on the ground, we'd have to build a medevac capability because we're not going to put troops out without, the ability to come get them. And then you start doing the math. That means you got to have, you only go so far from where the base is, and the base has got to have some type of forward surgical hospital because if you're going to have troops that get hurt, you want to be able to take care of them. Then you got to have a helicopter capability. You got to secure it. Before you know, you've got a lot of people doing those type things. So the idea of having the speed and range, and if you start looking at other places we may operate where things are really spread out, that's the capability that's going to give us. And even with our great National Guard partners is, for Homeland Security, the ability to move across states and have that capability is really going to make a difference. So we believe that we need both. We wouldn't put a requirement out there. And what's going to be really important when we're working with industry, that we keep these programs on cost, performance, and schedule. I mean, we're going to have to be very difficult on those, because there's not a dollar to spare. When I look at the Army, I'm saying, hey, first of all, every person counts, every dollar counts. And we have to be as efficiently effective as we can be with everything we have, so we can get these systems that I think we must have for the future.
Thank you.
What you said is incredibly important, especially as it relates to the scout mission, because right now we're, I believe, 0 for 3.
That's right.
We started with Comanche, armed reconnaissance, and then AAS. So it's an incredibly important thing to stay on cost, stay on schedule, because our Army future depends on that scout capability.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Moving next to Jason Probst from Rolls-Royce.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. Thanks for making the time today to be with us, and thanks for taking my question. I have a question related to future vertical lift as well. And that's an area, sir, that I think it's a great example of what you've described as that collaboration between government and industry to really advance solutions against those modernization requirements. Great cooperation, again, and leadership through the PEO and Futures Command to help make that happen. And, what we're saying is we've got, there are options in front of the Army of a fairly advanced state today. And so the question is really around with the options available and the state of those technology solutions today, do you find that there is support within the Army to take where we are today and even accelerate the program even further to get to that transformational capability that you've just described?
Yeah, I think we're looking for opportunities. When I take, we have this discussion that's going on. Even if you look at the interim security guards, moving away from legacy into the future, and I think the faster that we can do that, the better off we're going to be. Because if the technology is here today, it only makes sense to move into the future forward. Because as we know, we're in this time of great power competition, and what we want to do, it always takes time. We can say it's absolutely ready, but when you really take a look at how long it takes to put a system in place, how long it takes to train the people that are going to maintain it, how long, even the, if you're going to put it, you're in the engine business, if you're going to put a new engine, in a system, first of all, you got to take a look at how old are the old engines, what we need to do to train the new ones, how much, additional efficiency and power are we going to get out of those engines, and then with the airworthiness releases and all those things, the testing that has to go on, all those things come in. But, if you ask me the question, do we want to transform? Absolutely. Do we want to get it sooner? Absolutely. Because, you want to get it over the hill and into a program and wreck it, because that's when, you're in the best position to move forward. And you really don't want to leave legacy because, we got to be ready. The challenge chiefs have, and you've heard a lot of the chiefs talk, is, we're in a challenging time right now. And so every chief has to be ready to fight and win tonight. And so it's a delicate balance of how do you stay ready today as you get, you move in the future when you have constrained resources and a budget. And so it's a very delicate, endeavor that we're undertaking.
Thanks, sir.
Very good. That's 2 questions on future vertical lift, and the next person up is Keith Flail from Bell Helicopters. So it may be.
He's going to be talking about next generation combat vehicle. I know.
Yes,
I'm sure he's going to be interested in that.
It's IVAS.
He's not interested in those
question
at all.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I wanted to talk about long-range fires. No, but sir, related to Army modernization and the great power competition and some of the critics that are out there talking about Army relevance and Army relevance in the Pacific. What else can we, an industry, do to help on the modernization front for the Army, both with modernization itself and helping to carry the torch for the messaging on Army modernization?
Well, I think, when it comes to modernization and transformation, that's why a lot of us are just spending a lot of time making sure people understand, what it's all about. And a lot of people go, hey, what's the Army do in the Indo-Pacific? It's a lot of blue water out there, and there's a lot of air out there. Right. So what does the Army do? Well, if you watch the newspaper, I just had a call, since they announced it with the Indian Chief of Staff. There's a lot of those countries, and I think Indo-Pacific is India, and I think there's other countries that out there are very interested in having relationships with the Army, along with our other, service partners. And so, what does the Army do? Is wherever there's going to be, wherever you have land, you probably want some type of land presence and some type of relationship. And having said that, when I talk about, if you heard my words, it's really peace through strength. When we talk about great power competition, we don't want great power conflict, but the way you avoid that is by having a strong military, a strong Army, and strong allies and partners. And if you go out to the Pacific, many of those leaders out there that lead those, those countries are from the Army. They want to have a strong relationship with us, and we want to reciprocate, and that's what we're trying to do. And then when it comes to our modernization effort, and you take a look at why do you need future vertical lift? Well, we need future vertical lift because the aircraft in most of our systems that we have, and they're great systems, were developed in the 1980s, and we incrementally improved them over the last 40 years. And my argument, you can take it or leave it, is about every 40 years, you need to transform the Army. We did it in 1940 with General Marshall, who sat in my seat right before World War II. And we did it in 1980 when I came in the Army. We got these new things called, Apache helicopters and Blackhawks, and they had these crazy things called M1 tanks and Bradleys and Patriots. All that stuff came in 19, and those are wonderful systems. But as we take a look at, one of the things I have to do as the Chief of Staff of the Army is set up that Chief of Staff of the Army 40 years from now, that he has the right things in place. So he's dealing with 40-year-old equipment. He's giving the same speech and going, hey, we need to transform the Army. Marshall did it here. We did it in 1980. McConville tried to do it in 2020. And now it's 2060. So that 2020 stuff is old. We need transformational stuff. We run out of letters, whatever. The future vertical lift is a Zulu model now. And so we got to get some new things to be able to do that. That's what we have to do. And again, what we're going to do is make an argument, and then the civilian leadership in Congress will make a decision on what they want to fund and where they want to go from there.
Jim, I think we're...
Yes, sir. Building on that, not to be inappropriate, sir.
Yeah.
One of the themes that has come from the discussion, the congressionals, right, whether it says Representative Cheney or Congressman Brown or Congressman Whitman, one of the fundamental themes we have heard is the high probability that the final 2022 top line will not be $715 billion just for DoD, right? And that the sheer magnitude of the increase on the domestic side, which is 16%, about $107 billion increase in 2022 alone, right, will fundamentally, to get the 60 votes in the Senate side, will require some sort of a compromise. And so there's an emerging thought, particularly, and I associate myself with that because when I look at the budget, yes, I understand that DoD did, from a perceptual perspective, benefit from Trump. I get that.
Yeah.
Right, but I also understand that when I look at holistically at the budget today, what I see is a 1.7% increase in DoD, which is $11 billion, which is not even enough to pay for your inflation. And then I see that at the same time, I see a 16%, $107 billion increase on the domestic side. And so the biggest fear would be to make sure that the department doesn't engage in fratricide of the services accidentally killing each other. Because as a practical matter, maybe I'm just blind, but absent something extraordinary, it's almost inconceivable that the final 2022 top line number for the department alone, excluding DOE and NSA, is going to be $715 billion.
Yeah, from where we sit, and we've had the discussion is, the other services. We have the best Air Force, the best Navy, the best Marine Corps, the best Space Force in the world. And we're not, to us, it's not about competition, with the other services. I think they're wonderful. And what we all have to do is, as service chiefs, is lay out, what we're bringing to the Joint Force, what the trades are, and what that means. And there's a lot. I mean, this is, as you all know, you've been doing this a long time. There's a lot of factors that come to this thing. We're certainly concerned about end strength, and those are jobs. We're certainly concerned about our civilian, our great civilian employees. Those are jobs.
Yes, sir.
We're certainly concerned about the readiness of the force because those are lives.
Yes, sir.
And then when it comes to modernization and equipping is, we want to maintain the organic industrial base because, even when we talk about legacy, people talk about the CH-47, we have a discussion about Block 2. Those aircraft are not going, they're going to be around for a good amount of time. The Abrams, any of these type systems we have are not going away for years. We're just trying to set the table for the next 10 to 20 years as we transform. And those are all jobs too. So when you're looking at, the organic industrial base, when we look at investing in defense, those are all jobs too. And again, our civilian leadership will make that decision. And what we have to do is just be in a position to make sure we know what our priorities are, and make sure we can articulate the risks if we're unable to do that.
Yes, sir. And not to be inappropriate at the last minute. And I'm stealing a minute or two of General Pasquette's time.
He's okay. I know him well. He'll be okay.
Yes, sir. He's nodding over there.
He's all right. I'm taking his time. He's happy because this way, he can come back and talk about this.
Not to be inappropriate, but as a practical matter, that I see you as being different than the other services because you're so close. And you've lived under a frozen top line since, I think, 2018, right? And then I see the withdrawal occurring from Afghanistan. I do see, I can't quantify it, I'm outside looking in, sir, but I do see trade space, some Afghanistan withdrawal savings that will be available, number one, right? Number two, I see you're so close to getting the fielding of initial capabilities in 2023 that will bring the Congress to support those programs as they rotate into actual production, right? And the trade space from your organization as a whole, it's a terrible thing to even say this. I'm sure you're going to punch me. In the grand scheme, it is only a few $1 billion, and it's a small few $1 billion.
Yeah, we, as you know, I think a lot of people know, is we did some incredible work. We call it night court, to get after it, and basically moved $32 billion to get after the priorities that we have. And so it was a tremendous amount of work, and it's interesting because people go, well, how much more night court can you do?
There's nothing left.
I mean, it's kind of like we took, the first year we took the low-lying fruit, then we got up to the middle of the tree, we're taking the fruit off, we're at the top of the tree. There's no more fruit in that tree, and so we either got to get another tree or we got to, I don't know how much more fruit there is. So, we have to kind of work our way through that. But I think, this is where industry working with us. Everyone has got to be incredibly efficient, and we cannot waste $1.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're looking at in every sofa under every kind of pillow to make sure there's any change there, because we've got to transform the Army. And it's easy, not easy, but when you're the Chief of Staff of the Army, it's easy to stay in the present because you got people that are working. You have to be ready, but I'm just committed. I got 3 kids to serve and a son-in-law that serves, and I want to make sure we leave an Army for them that has the right equipment, because as a certain Secretary of Defense says, we're going to go to war with the Army we have. And I want to make sure that Army we have is ready to fight, not only today, but ready to fight in the future. And if it is ready to fight, maybe we won't fight.
Yes, sir. And it's almost inconceivable that in any fight with China, particularly since the byproduct is regime change, if they were to attempt to take Taiwan and lose, it's almost inconceivable that a China fight isn't going to become a land war at the same time, or in the event that it were not to become a land war, that Russia would not take some sort of opportunistic activity. And so I would just hope that people would look at this a little more holistically. And just in closing thoughts, or I apologize.
Yeah.
The one great achievement this year we're really trying to get across, and I think you've already made the point, is of relevance to the wheat farmer in Oklahoma. What's the one message that you would send to that wheat farmer in Oklahoma about the importance of making sure that the Army has the resourcing it needs?
Well, what I'd say that wheat farmer is we're very blessed to have these incredible young men and women that continue to raise their right hands to serve, and I think we as a country have an obligation to make sure that they have the training and the equipment to do their jobs.
Yes, sir. Well spoken, sir. That was perfect. I can't come up with something better than that, sir. That's the real deal.